After more careful analysis, we're led back to the conclusion that there were two shooters at the Trump rally. Hello, everyone. Dr. Chris Martenson here with another Citizens Investigation episode. We've got a lot of people weighing in. Thank you, everybody who sent us incredible analysis, shared your expertise, and did everything you could to help us get to where we are at this point in time. Particularly any more videos, anything like that. We want the data. The audio data is the key to this at this point in time so that we can resolve some things. And by the way, we're going to have to talk about this now. Remember, just last time, well, we had another hypothesis for how it is that those first three shots could have sounded so different from the other five. So we had to entertain that. After reanalyzing this right now, this hypothesis of two shooters, this is back to the fore right now as the best fit for the data we have. So remember, we were thinking with the help from the people at Raven Geostrategic that look at those things indicated on the arrows there. Those are side-mounted posts, posts for aiming, right? Iron sights. And because they're side-mounted, to use them on the side, you have to tip the gun over, so the gun's now laying like this, and now the gases that eject out of that muzzle at the front, and let me get my little red pointer thing out here. This muzzle at the front is going to throw the gases, hot gases, and even the flames that you would see from that muzzle flash. It's going to throw them to the side, so if you tipped it up, the thinking was maybe the sound was going up and down, and it would sound totally different than if it was sideways. So maybe Crooks laid that gun down so he could just sneak over the top of the roofline and tink, 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 maybe because he was concerned about how high he was. Now, I'm less concerned that that actually happened for two reasons. One, that kid just ran across the roof like doo-doo-doo, totally upright, like not a care in the world, just like doo-doo-doo, jogging across the whole roofline. So I don't think he was carrying enough that he's going to need those extra couple inches to bring that gun down. Plus, we saw his head popped up in the Dave Stewart film, right? You can see him from somebody standing just off of that big building looking up. That would be one of the hardest angles to see somebody. And boink, there's Crook's head. And we saw his head 5.3 seconds before the shooting first shots were heard. So he's just up, looking around. And by the way, there's not a lot of time to go from 5.3 seconds to this and get on. That's not a lot of time, even if it started right at that moment. So the way we're looking at this now is we said, well, our scientific process, obviously we have red, yellow, green data. We like the green data. We work with it a lot. That's video, it's audio, it's pictures that we can trust. And then we start our analysis and begin to resolve the mysteries and uncertainties. And we've resolved a lot of mysteries. We know a lot about this whole shooting at Misadventure now. We really have pretty good handle on the timeline and on what did happen and what didn't happen and things like that. But then we have to form our hypothesis. The null hypothesis, Crooks is the only shooter. Shot 8 shots, shot number 9 and 10, those were from law enforcement officers, with shot 9 coming from an ECU counter sniper or quick reaction force member, somebody out closer to the bleachers, the stands, and then shot 10 coming from somewhere else, but that looks like it was probably the South Barn with what's called Hercules 1, the Secret Service sniper team on it. Okay. And of course, hypothesis 2 is that Crooks shot no shots whatsoever and wasn't even involved in taking shots. So with that, hypothesis 1A is that, well, Crooks shot shots 1 through 3 and somebody else shot 4 through 8, or vice versa. Somebody else shot 1 through 3 and Crooks shot 4 through 8. We don't know. So those are the hypotheses. Now, again, this is part of the reason I'm excluding that idea that maybe it was that Crooks tipped his rifle over for those first 3 shots. That's why they sound different from the next 5, and they really do. Here we can see this image is less than 1 second from the first shot. It's been enhanced a little bit. He's got what looks like very good hair control. He's having a shampoo commercial day, but that gun is in the upright position. There's no time to lay it over, get the sight acquisition, and start firing 3 careful shots. So at the time of the first shot, we can even, if I advance this frame along, somebody comes frustratingly right in front of the frame at the wrong time, like that. But you can see that first shot, and his shoulder doesn't really appear to move at all, and you don't see his hair fly or anything. Nothing happens. You hear that first shot, and he's dead still in that. which can happen. You know, the 223 doesn't kick a lot. I get it. But at any rate, that gun looks to be in an upright position at this point in time. Okay. So given that, and why do I say so? Because the stock is the way the stock is sitting in. If it's tipped sideways, the stock's going to fit in very differently. You're going to have your hand on top because the trigger is going to be over the top now. So we see everything underneath, which we would expect with this gun being in an upright position. And plus, I mean, we're squinting at it a little, but this here looks like that red dot sight we can see here. So to me, this gun looks like it's in a completely upright position. So we're going to go with that. By the way, today is August 5th, Monday. The markets are really breaking. So for my regular subscribers, please don't miss this. Back today's scouting report, I really tear through the market meltdown, what's actually happening. I'll explain it, Chris style, of course. And I'm worried that this is the exact kind of a liquidity event we would see that would cause the great taking to get activated. If you don't know what that means and you have wealth in a portfolio or stock holdings, you really need to know what that means. Check out the great taking materials that I and other people have produced. You really need to know about that. So I just wanted to alert people that that's what's over there. Now, Peak Prosperity member D-Monk has done some incredible work and 3D catted up the entire site. And there we have a whole variety of things to talk through. We've got the south bleachers, we've got the stands themselves, we've got the north bleachers, and this is building 6. All the elevations laboriously poured through. Every possible measurement has been tested, battle tested. Now, here's what I did. Knowing that D-Monk is a very, very, very careful person, I gave no input. I just said, didn't want to in any way, shape, or form influence how D-Monk was going to go about their analysis. So I just said, can you, in your best, he uses AutoCAD, can you recreate the whole scene and the shooting scenario? And so he got at it. And what did he do? Page after page of notes. He's got all these big assumptions. I won't take you through all of them, but, he says, just to give you one, building 6 using CalTopo, which is a topographic service, he could find a clear and sudden north to south elevation jump from 1331 feet and 1333 feet, presuming the jump represents the edge between a sidewalk running parallel to the building. So all these things have to be in elevation. Very important. The building, where is its ground floor elevation? How tall is the building? So that when somebody's on the ridgeline, you know that aspect. How tall is the north stands? Where exactly is Trump's stage? The south stands. And by the way, the ground is kind of moving across that whole topography. So getting every one of those things right, because what we really want to do is we want to line up that bink on his ear with that bullet bouncing off the back stand railing, because that's the clearest line we've got. That if you draw a line between those two things, that will point you to exactly where that first shot came from. And that's a really important thing we're trying to resolve as well. He had 9 givens that he was working with. And so he really struggled and worked very, very hard, very diligently to figure out exactly how tall the building was from a variety of things. He looked at the chairs, sourced the chair model, found out how tall those are in the description from the manufacturer. There was a butt receptacle out front, which was a canister for people smoking where you put them in. That's a known thing. He found the model, how tall it was. There are a variety of things we could use for scaling. Blah, 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 comes through it all. He calculated a door height of 6 foot, 8¼ inches, and a stair rise of precisely 7½ inches. And those two numbers are used a great deal in construction, and they conform with Pennsylvania building code. All of this to say, he's a very, very careful and diligent person who went through every single one of these. And by the way, if we ever have to challenge one of these assumptions, we had the elevation slightly wrong, we have a slightly different thing, this just goes in the model, and now we can adjust very, very rapidly. But if you've been seeing models out there where people aren't taking you through the idea that they have a lot of unknowns, they did the best they could, here's the wiggle room, here's our certainty, here's our uncertainty, then you're probably not getting a really complete view of this whole thing. So this modeling has to be done exceedingly carefully. Again, what would be the best thing is if the FBI had left that crime scene assembled so that somebody could have come in and taken a LiDAR map of that whole thing, and people could have gone in and just put their eyeball right on the railing and looked past a 6'3" dude standing on the stage and said, right there, right? That would have been the best. Here we are having to half-ass it. No offense to anybody who, this is good work. This is really good work. Not that. But we are out here having to recreate it, which is not as good as using the original crime scene. And so I didn't, this is whole-assed. This is a very, very good, really good job here. But some things pop out of this right away. The first is that under all of these assumptions, shooting out of the first floor windows on building 6 is kind of a non-starter because these stands are in the way. So here you can see if you took this shot out and then you travel along, that's what these breaks represent here. There's a lot of territory between those two moments. And then by the time you get here with all the elevation changes and everything, this shot coming out of the window like this would have passed right through here with, of course, what we're solving for on this side after the break is Trump's ear. So to do that, you actually have to pass through the stands. That seems like a very, very unlikely shot to take. So because of that, we're going to actively remove the lower windows from play right now, put them into the red category because we can't find a firing solution that makes sense coming out of those lower windows. There were 3 lower windows to the right of those 4 vent stacks. Well, if you take those windows and you map them, you see they all clunk into these the north bleachers here before they can get themselves to Trump's ear over here. So that seems to be where we're at in the story right now. Now, carrying on as well, if you shot from the first floor, now you assume a straight line, that bullet would then be rising and would miss these stands entirely, wouldn't have a chance to hit Trump's ear and clang off of that upper railing. Now, that said, asterisk, caveat, we're going to have to wait for the weapon to be test fired to know its 0 point because, as Gary of Paramount Tactical explained very nicely when he dragged out his easel and his white paper when we were doing our live cast, is if that weapon was zeroed at 25 yards and you're shooting, it's zeroed at both 25 yards and the bullet keeps rising and then it comes back down again and it's zeroed out at 300 yards. So that's the 25, 300, 0 because the bullet isn't a straight line, it's a parabola. It goes like this, up and then down again. So if it passed at Trump's ear and it was zeroed at 25 yards, the chances are it's still rising through that whole period of time, right? Because that's how it was zeroed out. That could account for this. I don't think so based on the calculations we did, but we would have to wait and see where that rifle was zeroed at. If it was zeroed at 100 yards, not a chance. There's not a chance in the world that by the way this CAD model's been put together that we would be able to say that this window trajectory makes any sense whatsoever. But shooting from anywhere around the roof line on building 6 delivers to you a perfect result here. It clangs right off of the railing and Trump's ear. Now, at the time D-Monk did this, he didn't even know that it was the first shot that clanged off the railing. This is the red line he drew right here, and this is where it calculated out. And I said, well, that's exactly what happened. And so he was pleased that, after a lot of diligent, careful work, that it turned out that this all worked out. Now, the thing that also arose in this, though, is it wasn't immediately clear, though, where exactly that shot might have come from on the roof, opening up this other possibility, which is here down here, we can see this is the south bleacher. This is Crook's position right here, firing from here, missing Trump's ear. They would clang off right off of the back corner. That's where that railing would get intersected. However, if somebody was off to the side, there's a little parapet over here on the side of building 6, which you would see as a little false front, like a little square thing if you're down in the parking lot looking at building 6 there on its east face, right? You look at it, the door that everybody would go in where the ladder was, to properly orient this. Where exactly does that clang off? Well, a better solution, if it clangs off the railings just over to that side, to the west a little bit, if it clangs off over here, that actually comports better with a firing solution that comes from over to the side of where Crooks was. So knowing the exact point is going to be really important. And I tried to figure out if I could show you this video over and over again. It wasn't good, but so I just took some still frames. Here we have David Crooks who got shot. And James Copenhaver got shot also, is over here somewhere. And here's a guy, very, very lucky guy, just avoided all sorts of trouble, wearing a red hat and the dark shirt, the black shirt there. And here you can see, this is the frame right before the bullet hits. This is the first frame where the bullet is hit. It's hit somewhere in here, and it's making this gray puff of smoke with the blue arrow indicating. Here's that gray puff expanding out. Here's that gray puff expanding out. Those are the 4 frames where it goes no gray puff and then poof. So just 4 frames, each of these frames being a 30th of a second apart. Clang. my point here is that I can't see a solution where this railing could have been hit behind these two gentlemen, because they're both leaning in here. They're both up against the railing. A lot of people are leaning on that railing, and you can see the gentleman with the dark shirt. He's got his left hand down on the railing, and the only place I can really think that this could have hit was actually to go through, potentially, right through. That's why he's so lucky, just in the gap between his body and his arm, and clanged off the railing off of here on this part somewhere. Very hard, you can't exactly locate it. Kind of fits. Yeah. Not super clear. But if it was that this is being hit anywhere down this railing, that would fit with this other shooting angle here, where it's coming in, missing Trump's ear, and then clanging off somewhere down on the side of this bleacher here, rather than off of the top dead center of the back corner. But we can't say for sure. We are going to need a lot more angles. This will be a place of inquiry. We're going to look at this very, very carefully. Now, that shot, though, it definitely intersects metal. I think the railing looks like it came off the railing. We can't exclude that it came off of one of these lower balustrades here, the upright pieces. Don't know for sure, but it definitely hit metal. Now, here's the thing. If you were touching that metal, or you're holding on to that metal, and that bullet hits, it's almost going to be like a bee sting. It's going to be such a sharp clang that if you're holding on to that, I believe this begins to help us explain why some people have made, I think, a little too much of how these people in the back row reacted. Because if you notice, they have their hands, they are touching, they are holding on to or leaning up against that railing that got impacted by that bullet. That is going to be a very kinetic event. It could be an explanation for why these people reacted the way they did. They are leaning up against something, and as if, like, imagine if you were holding on to a piece of metal and somebody on the other end whacked it really hard with a baseball bat. Your first instinct, you'd probably jump. Well, trust me, even though it's a very small, tiny bullet coming out of a .223, it's hitting with such force, it's going to be like a bee sting in essence. It's going to be such a sharp feeling. You could imagine people having what you would call an automatic or an autonomic nervous system reaction, much like I'm old enough to remember you'd go to the doctor, they'd get this little rubber thing and they'd test your reflexes, right? So they hit your knee. You don't think, oh my gosh, my knee got hit, I better move it. There's this automatic reaction, a reflex, that happens when something unexpected jars and triggers one of your neural clusters, right? So in the knee, you get a little ding, your leg kicks. That's a reflex. So I'm saying that it's possible these people all had a reflex action, which should be very quick. That would be a pretty decent interpretation for why they reacted, because they were holding on to something that got a buzz, like a pretty staggering buzz. So now I'm going to get to the meat of this, though. I've been going over and over it. I originally said, look, the audio analysis is most consistent with two separate weapons. And it just sounded that way to me because I can hear a clear difference in shots 1 through 3 and 4 through 8. That's a qualitative difference. They just sound different, and we looked at them and we said, hey, they have different frequencies, different things. Now I'm going to take it one step further. This is source 4. And in our model, source 4 is way over to the side of the building. Okay, so that's building 6, far on the west side. There were people who are on the AGR complex side. They're outside of both those fence lines. They're back there where Crooks was hanging around. These are the people who shot pictures of Crooks on the roof. This person, source 4, is right in that district. And so they were filming at the time. And so they caught, these are the first 9 shots we can see here. And the shots are clearly visible as here's shot 1. And then we have shot 2 and 3. Then we have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then we have shot 9. And I didn't run this out because shot 10's another 10 seconds. 10 seconds. 10 seconds way over there. Okay, so it's way off that way. But when we look at these, here's something we can start to notice. So this is shot 1. I'm reasonably certain I can see an echo right here, but it was a little messy. I just went for 2. We have 2 very bright echoes. Here's the shot itself. And then here's the echo of that shot. So the shot happens, the shot sound comes to the camera first, but that shot sound also went somewhere else and bounced off a surface and then came to the camera. And here we can see it's an average of about 0.08 seconds when I measure them. It's a little imprecise, but this one was 0.083. This one was 0.077. This person is also moving a slight bit as they're kind of walking along as these shots are taken. Maybe they moved just an extra couple of feet. So this is interesting because these two things would be consistent. That time gap right there, 0.08 seconds, is consistent with a reflective surface that sound from the gun blast had to travel another 90 feet. Had to travel an additional 90 feet. The gun blast came straight to the microphone, but the echo came from something that was like another 90 feet away. What's interesting is when we go to the 5 shots, now remember these 5 shots are taken in just 0.77 seconds, so they stack right up on top of each other. Number 1 was between 1 and 2 was 0.256 seconds, is a full quarter of a second away, which is fortunate because here we can see the shot. This is the echo at 0.17 seconds away. Look how strong that echo is right here. It's strong. And so when we look at that, this one, I think you can see the beginning of the echo right there, but it's getting stepped on by that next shot. Same thing. This echo would have fallen if it was 0.17 seconds, exactly under that shot. This one ate that up, but this is the 8th shot, and it has no following shots for another, what is that? I think 1.6 seconds or something. At any rate, we can see an echo here too, very, very clearly. These echoes are 0.17 seconds away. Totally different. I don't have any echoes on the first 3 that are 0.17 seconds away. So even if we said, oh, Chris, his microphone is kind of facing a different way, so they sound a little different, or maybe he had his hand over the microphone for the first 3 and then took it off. We don't know. That's always possible. But what we can't have is we can't have this person who moved perhaps 10 or 15 feet in this whole stretch of time. We can't have the echoes come from such entirely different spots, because this at 0.17 seconds, this echo has to be coming off of a surface that is now closer to 195 feet further away. So there's something very wrong here just in the echo signature. So how do we account for that? Because we can't account for that with the microphone sort of pointing a different direction. That would not change the echoes in this story. So what do we do with that? The most consistent thing we do with that is we say those shots had to have been taken in different places. And I can't tell you how far apart they are with this methodology. I can just tell you that where they were shot from and where the echoes decided to come off of are very, very different spots, because it's more complicated to figure this out, but we can start to resolve some possibilities. Now, what if there was another way to tell? Well, there is, and here's another way. So Shine Sprite 4 back at Peak Prosperity, and I have the link to this. By the way, we're having just a romp of a citizens investigation back there. So Shine Sprite is the person behind Shine Sprite has 40 years of audio engineering experience and analysis. So really cool. And here they said in source 4, looking at the same thing we were just looking at here, this same footage, they said, well, different method. Here's a totally different method. Here we're looking at echoes. And I'm like, man, I can't line these echoes up. And look how strong these echoes are. I mean, that's a really strong echo there. A pow and a big old echo. And we don't have those big, strong echoes. We have weak echoes, and they're much closer, and everything's just different, right? And the way we account for that is gun 1 is here, gun 2 is way over there. And they just are bouncing off of different surfaces. So we'll have to resolve what we think the surfaces are. But here Shine Sprite is saying, look, in source 4, upon reviewing the video footage during recording, one can clearly see the videographer shuffling away from the source of the shot. So they're moving along, right? Good point. Adding distance, therefore time. Now they're looking at a variance in the delay compared to the stationary position of Trump's mic. So we have this incredible thing, which is Trump's mic. It's not moving, and it's just sitting there. And all the shots were strung towards it, so we get some really important information off of Trump's mic, because we get the snick of the bullet, that's the supersonic snick, and then we get later the report of the gun. And both of those are fixed in space, and they're not moving. So now you can compare, that's what they've done here, you compare how long did it take for the boom to get here versus how long did it take for the boom to get to this other mic, source 4. They should be the same. If there was one gun in one spot, the boom should take this long to get here, and it should take that long to get there once you account for the fact that source 4 is moving a little bit. Fortunately, we don't have two things moving because Trump's mic is just stuck there. Amazing. So Under the null hypothesis that there's just one shooter in its crooks, then if it's just one shooter, that delay, crack, boom, that boom getting to here should be the same getting to the other one. But what they find instead is they say there appears to be a vast difference in the delay of shots 1 through 3 versus 4 through 8, even when accounting for a few extra feet of distance gained by the videographer's movements. And here's what they come up with. Again, there's the link down there. Shine Sprite 4, thank you for this analysis. So here's what they come up with. The difference between Trump's mic and source 4 using a speed of sound of 1,203.6 feet per second, it really wouldn't matter if we used 149. There's people disagreeing over what the speed of sound was that day under those exact climactic conditions. It won't matter to this analysis because whether you fix the speed of sound at 1,200 or 1,149, you're still going to get this same gap coming out. So hold that criticism. We'll be working hard to make sure we have an agreed upon speed of sound that day at that time. Okay. So Trump's mic's timestamp at 0.000, difference from source 4 is 0. We're fixing everything to that first boom, okay? That first shot, shot 1, making it to Trump's mic. That's the fixed point of reference. We're all done. Great. So then here is the difference in timing. So 0 and then 3 milliseconds, 7 milliseconds. It looks like if you were just using this audio signature, you'd say, wow, this person moved maybe 8 feet between 1, 2, and 3. So that would give them an average speed of about 7 feet per second as they're moving with their camera, right? That's not unthinkable speed. But then shots 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, all of a sudden we have these gaps which jump out to 32, 33, 34, 37, 37. So these are very, very different. So how do we account for that? If we said the videographer continues to move at that same 7.1 feet per second, we're still missing a bunch of feet. Something's happened here. So their analysis says this supports the two-shooter theory with shots 1 through 3 being a minimum of 12.75 feet closer to source 4 than shots 4 through 8. So closer. So it's an interesting analysis. So now we have to begin asking some questions. Which is like, well, this has been my problem with the two-shooter theory. Is like, where do I put them? Like where are they? It doesn't quite work out in those upper 2-story windows, but maybe we have the muffling of shots 1 through 3, so it feels like they're hidden a little bit. They must be behind something. There's not that many spots. We know that there's a second window open on that 2-story building that is, if this is, how would I, let me see where I'd put that. I'll see if I have another slide where I can put that in there. Oh, I know where it is. Yeah, let's go here. So this is Crook's shooting spot. This is the 2-story building that the ECU snipers left magically for those 5 critical minutes. And there's a window right here. And so there's always a possibility that somebody was leaning out this window and shooting this way, which provides one firing solution. And then there's one other thing we have to talk about, which is a possibility. It doesn't quite line up with this analysis, but of course, that's why the investigation is continuing. So here, there's that. Remember I said there's this parapet on the front of building 6 here. So there would be a motorcycle parked down here, and over here on this side is where there was a ladder, and this is where presumably all the police were in here hanging out, playing cards while the shooting was happening and all that. So this is this parapet, and here it's been CAD'd out so we can see exactly that somebody could actually be hiding behind it here and shooting. And so Roger Knight here this morning back at Peak Prosperity, here's the link again down for that particular investigation, said that if this is where Crooks was, you got another 43 feet, and somebody could have been hanging out in this little parapet well back here, and that is another spot where somebody could have been hiding. We don't know yet. What we do know is that the audio analysis says we have very, very different echo signatures we are going to have to figure out and explain. As well, we have a time delay that seems to also combine now to indicate that these 2 guns are in different places. And so we have to begin to account for that. And right now, that's sufficient that we can't exactly place that perfectly into a second shooting position. We're going to have to resolve that. We don't know at this point in time. But right now, the data is back on the table supporting the idea that there are 2 guns being shot 1 through 3, very different from shots 4 through 8, Obviously, shot 9 is an official law enforcement. Shot 10, official law enforcement. No complaint about those at this particular stage. So how do we make sense of that? Don't know yet, but that's why the citizens investigation is continuing. Please, anything you got, anybody particularly who has any video from off to the west side of Building 6, we need that video and audio very badly. Anybody else has audio from anywhere else, particularly the closer to the AGR 6 building you are, the more useful that data is going to be. So if you have it, please share it, please upload it. And we want the raw files if possible, instead of something that's been compressed onto Twitter or YouTube, because we want the full richness of that sound. So with that, thanks very much for listening. And remember, if you want to talk about the markets and all that too, Peak Prosperity. Hey, we analyze all kinds of stuff and try and make sense of the world to help you get through it in a faster, more prosperous, profitable way. All right, thanks. See you next time. Bye.